Ladies and gentlemen, today, let's see, what am I going to discuss today? Yes, sedition. It's been a concern of mine. It's a little dark here today. I'm doing one of these editorial videos at night anyway. Like my necklace. It's Thor's hammer. It's cool. I got it off the internet. Facebook somehow figured out I might like one of these. Of course, they can't figure out how to avoid offending people they don't disagree with, but that's another story. You wonder what the hell is wrong with people that ought to know better. The problem is that you have provocateurs mainly, and a lot of them, of course, are socialists, which is what we expect. And, that's just what they do. They're all rule for radicals types. They're subversive elements. They've been, trying to tear the country down since 1917. This is normal behavior for that type of movement. After all, it's one that, in the form of communism, killed 100 million people. You factor the Nazis into it, who are also socialists, by the way. Killed another 20 million or so. There's even footage of a guy who punked Antifa by reading nothing but speeches from Adolf Hitler, just slightly altered to remove references to Germany, and they clapped their hands for it. They loved it. That's just how the left behaves. It's what they do. Of course, socialism is socialism. There are similarities in the ideology that are very profound, and the differences between them are very, very fine indeed, at least as they appear to the outside world. We all know what the Bolsheviks, did to the Mensheviks and to the Trotskyites and to the anarchists, and how they ultimately Hitler fought with them. Just because someone's almost alike doesn't mean you're friends. Case in point, Protestants versus the Catholics, the Reformation. It's what happens. Sadly enough, however, this sedition is also being perpetrated by individuals who consider themselves patriots and ought to know better, and ought to know how poisonous this stuff is in terms of destroying and uprooting your society. First case in point, hands up, don't shoot. This was a lie told by Dorian Johnson, who was Michael Brown's friend, who was shot by Officer Darren Wilson, of course. Now, you might ask, why would he lie in the first place? And this point, even though the Washington Post actually covered the article, and was covered, the article, the date of it was March 16th, 2015. The author was Jonathan Capehart, who, by the way, is black. Not that that should matter, but in today's world of leftist ignorance, it does. He stated it was a lie, but he never ran into why. And the answer, and that requires more explanation. See, there is something called vicarious liability. In other words, it's guilt by association, especially in the area of robberies. If, let's say, 5 guys rob a bank and they shoot it out with the police and someone dies, the dude in the getaway car down the street never sees anything, never hears anything, never gets out of the car. Well, guess what? The getaway driver, just like all the other robbers, can be charged with murder, or even capital murder, for the death of his fellow criminal, even though they got in a shootout with the police and the police shot him. And this has been used many times. Typically, the state will come in such a case and they'll, use it to turn state's evidence. Now, why is this important? Dorian Johnson and Michael Brown were, essentially, robbing and stealing from stores, stealing cigarillos and candy and other types of items, when they were stopped by Officer Darren Wilson, who had a description of the suspects. Now, of course, Dorian Johnson figured, having had some experiences in the justice system, I'm sure he knew that if the shooting was, if it was a good shooting, and, that he might be charged with the murder of Michael Brown. Well aware of this. And creating reasonable doubt by inventing a lie about hands up, don't shoot is a way for him to exonerate himself for the death of his partner in crime. The motive for that is very simple to understand. That point should have been mentioned but wasn't. That's why, of course, hands up, don't shoot is now used by Negro-Nazis and other idiots to, further demonize the police. It's a handy tool for the mob. Who wins? Who benefits from this? Well, Dorian Johnson benefits from it, and all of the other criminals who are making their money and doing their thing benefit from it. Why? This is the reporters, CNN, all that stuff, MSNBC. They all know that this is wrong, and they repeat it anyway. How trustworthy are they? Not so much. You have of course, the thing with Zimmerman. He was, of course, the media isn't going to tell you he was knocked on the ground and was taking blows to the head when he fired exactly one shot. And actually, if you are shot from below, if a criminal is standing over somebody and the person on the ground fires a shot that enters the body cavity from below and travels upward, that type of trajectory is particularly devastating to the human body. Normally, with handguns, people shot once have an 80% chance of survival. Not with a bullet trajectory like that, they don't. Probably why Trayvon Martin, expired, and he should have. You don't ground and pound someone to death because they ask you a question. Of course, he also had a lot of other stolen property as well. And interestingly enough, the family used a really old dirty trick that the Germans used. See, when Nazis were killed in war, soldiers were killed as adults, what the Nazis did was they would take pictures of that soldier when they were younger, maybe just, when they got out of Hitler Youth Camp, or hell, maybe it wasn't even the same kid. And they would run that picture in their media as depicting what that soldier looked like when they died, when in fact it wasn't. And the reason for that is the death of a younger person with less adult features generates a much bigger backlash in the population. It raises the level of hatred and extremism. And of course, the political types can use that to their advantage. Of course, Trayvon Martin's, somehow or other, who knows how that trick got told to them, Trayvon Martin's family did the same thing, releasing pictures of him as like a 12-year-old boy, when in fact this was a 17-year-old man who was in extraordinarily good physical condition, training for mixed martial arts, wanting to be a gangster, and, and George Zimmerman was not in good physical condition. He was very out of shape and not very athletic at all. And in a fight like that matters. That's why he was exonerated. You put 6 women in a jury, some of which whom have concealed carry permits themselves, and you expect them to find someone, and to agree that, oh yes, you can't shoot somebody because they beat you to death simply because you asked them a question. Getting 6 females to agree that a man should be beat someone to death because they asked a question, really? I don't, that case was, as soon as I knew that there were 6 females on the jury, I knew Zimmerman was going to walk. That's the way it is. But these people persist in perpetrating this kind of lie. He was getting Skittles and iced tea, and, that kind of thing. Of course, they don't tell you that those Skittles and iced tea and those types, what the stuff he was getting is, those are actually ingredients used to manufacture a drug called purple drink or lean, which Trayvon Martin was taking at the time. In other words, they ran out and he was getting the stuff to make more. This would be kind of like a moonshiner walking up the street with some copper pipe and, some sugar and some flour or something like that. We know exactly what the hell's going on. It's not hard to figure out. But the left perpetrates that anyway. And then, of course, you have, but this isn't just some, Black Panther problem or some Antifa problem. Sadly enough, this extends into the patriot movement as well. In some cases, case in point, 9/11 truth, which is anything but. If ever there was an Al-Qaeda syndicate propaganda wing, it's those guys. They seem to think that steel doesn't fail until it completely melts. They don't understand the concept that as metal is heated up, it loses its structural integrity, basically becomes more and more flexible, and it fails. They also will not tell you that in all building codes in any technological city, whether it's New York or Japan or Dubai or Moscow or anywhere else, skyscrapers are built so that if a structural failure occurs in any part of the skyscraper, the building must drop straight down into the ground and not fall from one side to another, like, for example, when you chop down a tree and it falls. That building code it's like you putting toilets in the bathroom. That is something that is done everywhere. And so, well, it fell straight down. Yeah, it was engineered. The problem is, yes, it was engineered to fall straight down, but, there was no effective defense against an airplane. Basically, the trade centers were built so if it was hit by a plane that ran out of fuel, and, it wouldn't fall down immediately. The architects, couldn't have planned for a terrorist attack, and if they had tried to say that the building would have done that, it wouldn't have worked. The fact is, bin Laden had blueprints from all these skyscrapers, all these buildings, all the designs and drawings and specs to these buildings were freely available from Library of Congress or any library in New York City. You could find out which buildings were built, how they were built, who did the work. All the contracting stuff was out there. It's not classified. And you can easily look through those designs and see the flaws in the building. Of course, the 9/11 truth people aren't going to tell you that bin Laden's family were in the building business, in the real estate business. Ironically enough, kind of in some bizarre ways, they're kind of the satanic version of Donald Trump. I mean, the bin Laden family builds mosques and bridges and roads and hospitals and stuff all over Saudi Arabia. They know construction, and they could look for flaws in buildings to see which one would go down quickest if hit by a plane. The aircraft that hit the World Trade Center knocked the insulation off of the metal, the fireproofing, because that fireproofing was sprayed on and it wasn't flexible when it dried. Some types of fireproofing are kind of, fiberglass or rubbery in there. They're flexible. This stuff wasn't. It dried like plaster. So if you hit it, if you have a piece of plaster on a piece of steel and you whack the steel, the plaster comes off. Okay? That's how anybody who works in construction will tell you that. The plane also hit the water lines that the sprinkler system used, because those went up the center of the building in one place. So you knock out the insulation, knock out the sprinkler systems, knock out the electric to a lot of those systems. She's going down. Boom. It's that simple. Now, he could have hit the Empire State Building. He could have flown it into the Chrysler Building and could have hit anything he wanted. Those buildings were vulnerable. Hell, he could have hit... Why didn't they hit the Sears Tower? Yeah, probably, I would suspect that the Sears Tower is probably built a little bit stronger. But that's just me. And then they complain, oh, well, there's no footage of the plane hitting the Pentagon. It shows an explosion. The security camera on the Pentagon had a frame rate. It only shot 4 frames per second. It was taking a series of still pictures. That camera was designed to capture, for example, a truck bomb, like a Tim McVeigh style thing in a Ryder truck that would pull up and explode. It was not built to capture the image of something going 600 miles per hour into a building. With a frame rate of 4 frames per second. And if you look at the Pentagon footage, you'll see it looks very choppy because it's taking a series of still photographs. Obviously, you're not going to see a plane hit. Of course, the seditionists and traitors will not tell you that either. Okay, they're going to make it look like a conspiracy. They're also not going to tell you that jihad over the past 1,400 years has murdered 270 million innocent people, and that they have designs on ruling the entire world. Basically, death cult run by a war criminal who told his followers, you'll get 28 young boys and 72 virgins in heaven. And if you, and among other delights, the likes of which only Jeffrey Dahmer would really enjoy, if you go and be a terrorist. You have, and you also have these other Nimrods that are essentially uttering accusations of weather control, worldwide weather control, earthquake control, through this HARP thing. I mean, that's basically a witchcraft accusation. That's the kind of thing that witches were burned at the stake for in the Middle Ages. The last time humans were accused of climate change, by the way, witches burned at the stake. Doomsday theories are far from harmless. They are tools of oppression used by criminal, traitors, and subversive elements. Of course, you also have these other idiots, the ones who think that the earth is flat and the center is hollow, who are accusing the United States government of collaborating with aliens against Americans, letting aliens implant people with hybrid babies to get weapons and that type of thing. I mean, the only people who actually believe this are those that, were smoking weed when they should have been in algebra class or whatever, or statistics. I mean, there are trillions of stars in the galaxy, and just more stars in the Milky Way alone than grains of sand on the beaches in the world. And most certainly, there's probably something alive on those stars, and some of it may be intelligent. But the very thing that almost guarantees that there's life in outer space also guarantees, just based on pure numerical odds, that they're not going to find us. If you have more stars in the galaxy than grains of sand on every beach on Earth, that's a lot of stars. How are they going to find us? The odds are probably trillions times trillions times trillions to 1. Essentially, even if there's 100 of them, you're not going to be found. That's just the way it is. I mean, that is an unsatisfying answer, in the emotional level. But again, feelings aren't facts, so they're wrong. And here's where I'm going with this. I mean, if you think that the United States government is sending out police to shoot black people at random, collaborating with aliens at Area 51 to mutilate cattle and take samples from and look the other way while aliens probe people, and that our own government destroys its own buildings and kills its own rich elite bankers, and that the United States government is using witchcraft to control the weather, and that, God knows what else. If you really believe that the United States government is perpetrating these crimes, Why are you living in the United States? Get the fuck out of my country. Why would you choose to be here? Hell, Putin has, Vladimir Putin's not a nice guy, but I can't picture, the Russian government, flying planes into the Kremlin just because they can. You'd be safer there. See, the subversives and traitors who do this know damn well that their stories appeal to those who are naive, who are emotional, weak-minded, and who do not do their own research. And these lies are being used to weaken the United States of America. It's real simple. And the other thing, of course, the other famous lie that they're talking about are genetically modified organisms, GMO foods, and vaccines. They're telling people that none of these have to be FDA approved, that they don't have safety standards, that, you could just sell a vaccine and it doesn't have to be marketed as safe. It doesn't have the standards of other products. Again, this is a bold-faced lie. The regulations governing those are freely available for anyone to find. And in fact, new vaccines and GMO foods get a much higher degree of scrutiny than something that you might just grow in your garden. These companies who build it, they don't want to be sued. Why would you, and they're doing and why are they vaccinating people or putting fluoride in the water, sterilize people? In particular, with all of these illegal immigrants that are here and have not yet been deported, you actually do want to have your vaccines. Because any germ from anywhere in the world could potentially enter your body. That's just the world. That's the country we live in. Again, trying to cause widespread disease and death is just something that, socialist types engage in. As far as, GMO foods, you take a protein found in one type of thing and you put it in another. For example, like golden rice has, a protein that makes vitamin A so that people, which helps prevent blindness. If you give it to people in the third world where they have nutritional caused blindness, that prevents that from happening because you're giving them a vitamin in your food. That's all it is. In other words, and basically what makes it golden is the same protein that makes carrots orange. So it's, because carrots can't grow in a rice paddy. Okay, so if you eat rice and carrots, you're eating what Monsanto sells as golden rice. They just put the two together. And so you could plant it. It's not hard to understand. These types of things, the idiots who peddle this nonsense are subversives. And even PETA, they say they're kind to animals. Well, when people give their cats and dogs to PETA, PETA euthanizes them. PETA kills them. They kill animals. There's even a website, PETA kills animals. Look it up for yourself. The sad thing is look, it's very simple. America is the greatest country on earth. Love it or leave it. Because the people are getting sick and tired of these treasonous rats and seditionist types. And I'm telling you, doesn't matter what side of the political aisle you're on, there is no excuse for this type of behavior. I mean, even, and not that I'm particularly religious, but even the book of Leviticus has an interesting statement. That slander is worse than murder. And those who are slandered, unlike murder victims, can still retaliate. Of course, you could just ask Stormy Daniels. See, when someone buys your silence, you're supposed to stay bought, you dumb bitch. It's not hard to understand. Either back our country back America, stand for the anthem, support our troops, support just the people of the United States, or get the fuck out. Listen, for every one of you little seditionists, treasonous, backstabbing rats, there's 1,000 Mexicans that would love to have your citizenship, that would love to be where you are. In fact, they've crossed the border anyway. And if you're one of these idiots yelling about the government and aliens, but you don't want to close the borders, you are the most hypocritical piece of human trash out there. Let's take a trip down the rabbit hole. Okay? Let's say the government, despite the statistical impossibility, we're going to say that the laws of mathematics don't matter. And somehow the United States government found a crash, we'll go with the legend, the crash saucer at Area 51, contacted the aliens, and the aliens are collaborating with them. Well, guess what? A program like that's classified. But those Martians, or, aliens, I guess they don't have green cards. I guess they have little green men cards. They can only be on military bases. Those damn aliens are more law-abiding than the pieces of crap MS-13 that are out there stealing your tires right now. Okay? There's a process. They are, under the jurisdiction of the United States. And presumably we're getting lots of technology and highly skilled individuals that we couldn't get any other way. At least we're getting something for it. And if they're running around doing cattle mutilations, kidnapping people, zapping the memory and putting them back in the street, that's probably not great. But an antimatter powered Aurora spy plane and other types of, technology could be deemed worth it. Such a program is kind of legal. If you're against that, but you want to let these idiots run amok in the country, you're a hypocrite. And no, there are no aliens that they're collaborating with. Now, are there people who would sell out and collaborate with such individuals? Are there people with the capacity and the greed and the short-sightedness to collude? Sure. But, that doesn't mean that they actually did. Love this country, support our president, or get the fuck out. Believe me, listen to what Kanye West had to say. It's a little disjointed, but, you can piece the fragments together. It's not that hard to do. I'm just fed up with all this nonsense. Everybody, is in a race to commit a yet even greater act of treason and an even, more filthy act of sabotage than the other idiots on the other side do. If this crap continues, there's going to be a civil war in this country. And by the way, for you little Antifa idiots that want a civil war, I'd advise you to read about, Sherman's March to the Sea. Go look at what happened in the last one. Okay? And then, think about what you're doing. Do you Antifa idiots and Black Panther idiots think that you're actually going to beat the United States government, which has nukes, or the, people's militia in this country? You have 300 million guns, 80 million gun owners. You really think, they can buy, not only have guns, but they can reload and make their own ammunition if they run out? Really? What plan do you have to deal with that? The gun owners in this country, basically, you figure if every gun, you figure the average, box of ammo is what, like 50 rounds or 100 rounds? Let's just say, a very small stash of ammo. Many people, including myself, have a lot more rounds of ammunition for their weapons. That's enough to literally blow the head off of every man, woman, and child on the planet. There's at least 250 billion rounds of ammo in this country owned by civilians. What do you think you'll accomplish by pissing them off? I mean, what do you think you're going to, on the left, accomplish by impeaching Trump? Trump, his policies are centrist, slightly right-wing, more centrist. He's, when you get behind the bombast and you kind of factor that, he's actually kind of a moderate Republican. Mike Pence, however, our vice president, is Charlemagne disguised as a Protestant. See, if Pence gets in, he really will define foreign, enemies, foreign and domestic. He really will declare martial law. He really will shut down the abortion clinics. He really will call up the militia groups, Michigan militia and all those, and send them to the border, okay? He really will tell people, you ain't working on Sundays, okay? And he really will give the left its worst nightmare, and that's America being a Christian country. And of course now the Christians, and they go, well, that's great. Well, maybe we should impeach Trump anyway. No, not really. See, here's the unlovely truth about theocracy. It sucks too. It's just as bad as communism. If you want to see how successful theocracy is, just go to Afghanistan, go to Somalia, go to Pakistan, go to Saudi Arabia, their backwaters. Your science, your innovation, your technology, your standard of living, research, all that stuff goes away. Because civilization can't progress on the back of superstition and nothing else allowed in its place or beside it. And when Pence's version of Christianity or whatever is different from yours, and then someone sticks a bayonet in your face and says, oh, no, it's not, the unlovely truth about theocracy will rear its ugly head. And you'll wish, you little scumbags and Antifa on the left, you'll beg for Donald Trump to come back. Love this country or leave it. It's real simple. We don't need you, but you need us. You are the subordinate idiots, okay? The subordinate partners, I guess you could say, in terms of our societal relationships. Long live the Republic.